And why was that, Dad?
Why was it?
Yeah. Why do you think it was? I mean, was that par for the course in those days? I mean, sometimes kids spend more time with their grandparents if their parents
Well,
are out working.
I think grandfathers probably have more patience than fathers do at times. I don't really remember spending very much time with Dad at all.
Did you get along with him?
I guess I must have got along with him when I was young. But as a teenager, I would have to say, no, I didn't get along with him very well.
Why?
Well,
What
I guess
happened?
I was probably as headstrong as he was. Who knows?
What sort of things caused conflict?
I guess damn near everything.
Now you were at the farmstead until you were 9, and then the family moved into Nacum. And how big was Nacum at that time?
Oh, it probably was 400 people, maybe.
And how much different was Nacum when I got to know it when I was a kid from the Nacum you grew up in?
Well, I don't think it was an awful lot different. I guess there probably were some things you wouldn't do anymore when you were there that we did commonly every day. Never thought anything about it.
Like what?
Well, can you imagine, how old were you? 12?
Sure, you're younger than that too, but yeah, 12.
Okay, 11, 12-year-old walking downtown with a 22 in his hand to the co-op store to buy some ammunition, taking the gun into the store and saying, I need a box of shorts, 22 shorts, and the people behind the counter wouldn't even blink an eye. They just give you a box of shorts and take your 50 cents from you. I wouldn't try that when you were there even. You know?
No, nobody was doing that then. No?
No.
So that's part of that freedom that you described.
Yeah, freedom and common sense, I think, was a little bit more common then.
Yeah, well, I wondered to some degree, tried to think that through. I mean, people were working physically and directly in a way that they don't so much now. You know, when you're on that farm, you're contending with animals. Well, you're contending with the cold, you're contending with the heat, you're contending with the light for that matter. I mean, everything's work, but you're directly related to that work, right? I mean, there's an immediate payoff. You go out and the chickens are there and you have eggs, and you go out and milk the cows and you have milk, and you churn it and you have butter, and you turn the kerosene light on and you have light, and you light a fire and you have heat. You know what I mean is that it's hard work in some sense, but the reward is instant. Plus it's really real. It grounds you to the actualities of things. And then, you know, people were younger when they had their families, and so I think they were more likely to grant their kids, because they were a little more wild, let's say, being young, more likely to grant their kids a certain degree of independence because they were still young and wanted to have fun. And then most people had more siblings than they do now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think one of the reasons that people are more helicoptery around their kids now is because they wait till they're 35 to have them. And so they're older by then and more cautious. And then they only have one or maybe two. And so they don't have 10, it's like, you're not going to stay on top of 10 kids. That's not going to happen. I don't think you can stay on top of 4. And so that means to some degrees the kids raise themselves, right, in sibling groups. And the parents supervise, but sort of from a distance. And I think you probably get a lot more realistic view of the world and your place in it when you're wrestling for position with like 6 siblings.
Yeah,
Pretty hard to be it's hard to be special in that situation. I mean, your siblings aren't going to like that. So you never know what these shifts cause, and that common sense, it seems to me, that's associated with like a grounding in real things, and not this tendency we have now to sort of float off into abstractions.
Yep.
Yeah, because even when you're trying to build something and you're building it out of wood, let's say, because I built lots of things out of wood, it either works or it doesn't. It's really, the proof of the pudding, so to speak, is right there in front of you. And you can't delude yourself into thinking your tabletop is flat and straight when it's not. It's either flat and straight and the table is stable and looks half decent, or it isn't. So,
True.
yeah. I even saw, in my generation, a lot of the young men tinkered with cars, because you could.
Yeah.
Right? You could understand a car with a certain amount of work, and you could figure out how all the parts worked, and you could even repair them. They're like yourself. Sometimes you had to buy a part, but sometimes you could repair them, and you had to take them apart and put them back together, and if you didn't put them back together correctly, they didn't work. And now cars are so sophisticated that, well, they
can't
never
even get the hood open.
No, well, they never break down virtually. I mean, they'll run.
They do.
Well, they run a long times, but you certainly can't toy with them like you once did. They're not immediately at hand in the same way. So I liked Nacum. I thought Nacum was a fine town. It was quite a nice town. It had a lot of brick buildings. When I was a kid in the early 70s, the downtown was still thriving. There was a butcher store that was thriving. There was a movie theater. There was a dairy that sold milk. And if I remember correctly, at that time, there wasn't anybody who ran the dairy. There was just a refrigerator. And if you wanted milk, you just got the milk and you put your money in a basically what was a tin can. There were no locks on the door or anything like that. That's just how people did it. And that would have served a community of probably 2,000 people, something like that.
No, not that many.
Well, but surrounding Nacum as well?
Maybe you're right. Yeah. No, but by that time there was no dairy in Nacum. No, that milk came from Melfort, which was 30 miles away.
Right, but that's still how it was sold.
That's exactly how it was sold. Yeah, the proprietor of the theater was Ralph Smith. And he had a great trust in people, I guess, and he said he lost very little money that he was aware of.
Yeah, well, he'd know if he made a profit at least, and certainly he didn't cost him in staff. So maybe, and you never know, maybe, it's conceivable, but probably not the case, that the odd pilferer might have actually needed something to eat. I suspect no, because that isn't necessarily what drives people to pilfering. But yeah, I thought Nacum was a real nice little town, and so, and it was, the streets were nice and straight, and the houses were well built. It was quite a thriving little community. It had a nice brick school. That's where you went to school. So, everyone moved into Nacum at the same time. Your grandfather?
No.
Oh, how'd that work?
Well, my grandfather and grandmother were the ones who moved into Fairview, and
Nacum.
Or yeah, Nacum. They moved into Nacum, and I'm not sure why I ended up there, but it probably had something to do with my grandfather and grandmother. Anyway, I was in about grade 3, I think, when I joined them in Nacum and went to school there. And mom and dad and the girls stayed on the farm. And it sounds like we were really separated, but the distance was about 4.5 miles. And it wasn't as though you didn't see them every day, because most days you did see them.
And was that an okay separation for you? Were you unhappy about moving from the farm? Were you happy to be moving into Nacum with your grandparents?
Yeah. I told you I got along with my grandfather and my grandmother exceptionally well.
And what about
They
your mom?
probably, Mom, I got along quite well with Mom. She was very kind too.
And what did she think about you moving into town away from her?
I really don't know, Jordan. I don't know
I know
what she thought about it.
Well, it was clear that she loved you beyond belief. I mean, I remember one time we were playing cards up at the lake in Saskatchewan, and Grandma was up there. This isn't that many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. And so you would have been 70, I guess, 68, something like that. And Grandma would have been, well, in her late 80s. And we were playing cards, and you were getting teased. I think Julian was teasing you, and I think maybe I was teasing you. And Grandma said, "Don't you pick on my Wally." And she meant it. And I thought, this is so funny.
She wouldn't have said Wally. She'd have said Walter.
Yes, that's right. That's what she said. "Don't you pick on my Walter." Well, it really cracked us up, because, well, you were 70-year-old grandfather by that point, and she's in her nearly 90. And it was just like listening to a 20-year-old woman maybe talk about her 4-year-old kid. It's like, don't pick on my Walter.
Mom definitely spoiled me.
Yeah, well, so she probably missed you when you left.
Yeah, she probably did. But like I said, it wasn't as though we were gone for any length of time. At the very most, it would have been a school week, and probably, well, for a good part of the year, it probably wouldn't have been that, because my grandfather always went to the farm every day. Unless there was something extraordinary going on.
So did they move into town because they finally had the financial resources to have 2 houses?
Well, again, Jordan, I honestly don't know. I would suspect that might have been the case.
Yeah, well, those are pretty cramped. Those are pretty cramped living quarters. Did you get along with your sisters?
Well, I could say yes, and I could probably say no. Depends.
Okay.
On the whole, I think we got along relatively well.
How much age difference was there?
Well, Betty was 2 years younger than me, and Judy was 7 years younger than me.
Yeah, well, 7 years is a long gap.
And she was very spoiled.
With Betty or Judy?
Judy was very spoiled because she was the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
Betty was the in-between girl.
Right. Right. So, when you were out on the farm, did you have a lot of friends, or was it mostly activity that centered around the farm?
Had friends, but they weren't right next door.
Right.
They were miles away. But you had the occasional friend that would come over, and I had a good school friend called Helmer Wunderbaum, And Helmer could really ride. And he used to ride over on his horse every once in a while, and we would go for a ride, you know, around with him. Me on the horse that I rode not very well, and Helmer clinging to it like a Comanche.
So how was it that he got to be a better rider than you? Just more practice?
More practice, I guess, yeah.
And so,
Well, Helmer was probably more of a cowboy than I was, too.
so what made you not a cowboy? I mean, you'd like to carry your .22 rifle downtown into Nacum. That sounds like a pretty cowboy thing to do. So what was the difference?
I don't know. I really don't know what the difference was. Difference is people.
So you could read before you went to school?
Yep,
Did you like to read?
obviously.
Why
I
obviously?
stayed with it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think you do things that you don't like for very long, do you? If you like it, you do more of it. So
Were
I
you-
read.
Were you a reader in comparison to your friends? Or was that a rather common pastime? Because when I grew up, most of my friends didn't read. You know, not much. So I was very different.
Well, yeah, the difference though was that I didn't know what my friends were like at home very much, you know. Even when I went to Nacum to school, I can't say that I really knew very much about very many of my friends as far as their reading went. One maybe. Anyway, yes, I could read before I went to school. I can tell you one thing that I can remember quite well. I had learned how to do cursive writing. And this was before I went to school, too. My grandmother had a really lovely hand, and so did my grandfather. You could tell that they were taught how to write. Anyway, I was copying a comic, and I was doing it from the print to cursive writing. But what I didn't know was that you stop between each word. Now, it sounds pretty damn simple, but I can remember that asking my grandmother, how does this work now? What do I do when I come to the end of this word and start the next one? Just connect them and keep going? Anyway, just an aside.
Well, it's simple when you learn it, but it's not necessarily obvious when you haven't learned it.
That's right.
Did you like school?
Yep.
Did you like school all the way through school?
Oh, no, I'm sure there was periods of time and when I was a teenager that I would sooner have been out farming or out helping on the farm. In fact, I think I've got one report card that says something to the effect that if Walter attended more regularly, he would do much better.
And that would have been
Which-
junior high?
Yeah, that was probably about grade 9, somewhere in there.
So what did you do when you skipped school? I never do that. You see, I hardly ever skipped school. And every time I did, God damn it, you caught me. I did it like 3 times. One time I drove to Hines
Oh,
Creek.
3 times.
Really? It wasn't very, I tell you, it wasn't very often. One time I drove to Hines Creek to get away from you. I thought, I'll drive to Hines Creek. He's not going to find me there. And then on the way back from Hines Creek, you drove by and waved at me. I said, oh my God, he caught me again. So ridiculous.
Well,
yeah.
you weren't very inventive.
Not in that
Anyway.
regard, that's for sure.
No.
So why did you stay with school? You graduated. Was that was that the standard routine? Did most people graduate, or did most people drop out in grade 9 or grade 10?
I don't really know. I would think that the majority of kids of my generation probably finished school. By that I mean went to grade 12. Not all. I mean, I can remember several of my friends dropping out prior to graduation, in the grades before. But a good many of them finished school.
Yeah, almost all my friends from junior high dropped out. Well, many of them went and worked on oil rigs, and you could understand that to some degree. But I had almost a completely different group.
Jobs probably weren't that plentiful at the time I got out of school or was in school. Anyway,
great grandpa had a band.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say he had a band. He was in a band.
What was the band? Do you remember the name of the band?
No, hell no. I don't know that. That's way before my time.
Well, they still played. I can remember seeing them play in the living room once or twice.
You can remember some of them playing.
Uh-huh.
I think the majority of the ones that he played with in the band were probably long gone, disappeared.
Was it a big band?
Oh, hell, I have no idea. I don't even know if you'd call it a band. I call it a bunch of guys that got together to play for dances.
Yeah,
well, Dad was a pretty good guitar player, and he could sing.
Yeah, well, I can remember Grandpa singing. I mean, I don't think we have any recordings of him singing, which is too bad. But I can remember him singing. Yeah, he had a pretty plaintive country voice, and he was a pretty good guitar player. Yeah. He made me a guitar, Grandpa.
Yeah, I've still got it. It's downstairs here.
I know, it's in 2 pieces. What happened was that in the closet, it was strung too tight, and the neck eventually worked loose from the body.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, that's what happened to it. And I guess you're not supposed to leave a tightly strung guitar like that for too long, or perhaps I'd strung it too tightly, knowing very little about guitars.
Yeah. So anyway, it's sitting behind the chair down in the basement.
When did you meet Mum?
I would imagine that I probably met her when I went into grade 3 in Nathan.
What do you think of her?
I think that I thought she was wonderful right off the bat.
You think that?
Well, yeah, I kind of do.
I thought that about Tammy.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. I was right, too. Ha-ha.
Yeah, so was I.
Well, good. Good for us.
Yeah.
What the hell do you think accounts for that?
Good luck.
Yeah. She told me she kind of knew, too. Tammy.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that Beverly knew. I mean, we weren't always good friends even.
Mm-hmm.
But
were you in the same grade, or was she one grade lower than you?
She was one grade lower than me.
Right. Tam and I were in the same grade, so she was a year older than me because I was young for the grade. But so we were. That facilitates a friendship, being in the same grade.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So,
but don't forget, we were in the same room.
Oh right.
As the other grade, because there were at least 3 grades in a room. So we were probably in the same room much of the time.
When did you start going out?
Well, I think the first time we went out, we had been to a birthday party across the road from where we lived in Nacum, and some kind of a game, she had to walk me home, which really entailed walking across the road a little bit farther. So if you count that one, we were probably 10, 11 maybe.
I know obviously you count that one.
Yeah. When was the first time we went out? I think probably it was, I think I must have been through school, grade 12 or past grade 12. And for some reason, I knew that Beverly was babysitting at her brother's place that evening. And so I went and knocked on the door and said something witty like, "Tadam, I'm here," or I don't know what. Anyway, I think that's the first time that we were together that way. And then I think we were together most of the time after that.
What drew you together, do you think? Why was she attracted to you? Do you know?
Oh, God only knows that.
Well, you were pretty good looking.
Oh, yeah, I was really handsome, Rich. Yeah, no, I don't, well, maybe that was it. No, I don't know. She probably made a big mistake. But anyway.
Well, you have your good
such
qualities.
Such is life.
Yeah, fair enough. What drew you to her?
Yeah. Hey?
What drew you to her?
What?
What drew you to her?
What drew me to her? Well, I told you. I always thought she was something special. And I probably followed her into Saskatoon when she went to take nursing. That was probably my main motivation.
So you said that you graduated high school and then you basically followed Mom to Saskatoon. Were you planning to go on to further education?
Yeah, I think I was.
When did you decide you wanted to be a teacher?
Oh. I don't know. I had a couple of really good teachers in high school. And maybe that was part of it, I don't know. Joe Foffenoff and Frank DuPont.
What made them good?
Well, they knew their subjects well, they taught well, and they were good people. You know, they were easy to get along with, and yeah.
Did you?
I did a lot of marking for Frank. On the weekends and that kind of thing. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know.
These were men you respected?
Yep. Still do.
What made them good teachers?
Well, I told you.
Oh, yes.
They really knew their subject matter. They were interesting to listen to, and they were just good people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you moved to the city. How often had you been to Saskatoon before? I mean, that's a pretty big city by Nacum standards.
How many times had I been there before? Oh, I would guess you could probably count it on one hand.
So what do you think of Saskatoon?
It was fine.
Were you excited to be in the city, or would you have you preferred the small town and the farm?
Oh, at that time, I think I preferred the city. I mean, there was lots of, there was lots going on and that kind of thing.
Did you have a good time in university?
Did I have a good time? Yeah, I think so. I had a car that wouldn't start when it was cloudy, but yeah, most of the time it was good.
Why wouldn't it start when it was cloudy?
Don't ask me. It was the most perverse beast I ever had.
So, how old were you when you asked Mom to marry you?
You mean the first time?
How many times did you have to ask?
Oh, hell, I must have asked her. I have no idea.
How many?
Times.
Oh, yes, I bet you know exactly how many. How many?
No, I don't know. I tried to talk her into marrying me a number of times. And she wanted to be a nurse, and that was the first thing to get done. But yeah, no, I asked her more than once, I'm sure.
I think I asked Tammy 5 times.
Well, I don't think you have the record, but I'm not sure.
She asked me once too, so that worked out okay. The final analysis.
Oh, well, I don't
She
recall
actually,
Beverly asked.
she had come to Montreal to live with me, and we had discussed getting married, but she felt it was time, and she actually asked me on, isn't it Sadie Hawkins Day? Isn't that?
Yeah?
Yeah.
That was
We didn't even
Little
know
Abner.
it. We didn't even know it. It just happened
You
that
didn't
way.
even know it.
No.
Yeah,
So that was
well,
pretty funny.
Little Abner was just as real as Santa Claus,
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I
Well,
said
that was
yes.
a good deal.
It was a good deal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good
Would
deal.
would you say that you've had a happy marriage?
Yep, I would say I have had a happy marriage.
What was more important to you, your family or your career?
No doubt at all. Family.
What was the best years you spent with your family?
Well, I think the best years were the years that you guys were home and growing up. They were great years.
And of those years, younger kids, older kids, what was better for you?
Oh, I can't say that because it was all good. No, there's no doubt that was the best time of my life.
Why?
Oh, who knows why?
Come on.
I think it's instinctive for some people.
Yeah, well, you're really good with little kids.
Well, there was, no doubt.
You
Yeah.
seem to trust them.
Well, I seem to be relatively good at that, yeah. And most little kids trusted me.
Yeah.
Not very many that I had shy away from me.
So you spent a lot of time with me when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that particularly?
Huh? What can I say? What do I remember about it? I don't know. I remember quite a few things, but I don't know if any of them are god awful important,
Well, pick one.
Well, I remember the time that we hatched those chicks in the porch
In Nipawin.
in Nipawin.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I remember driving home with you to Nacum a number of times and talking the whole time because you'd never stop asking questions.
Yeah, well, hasn't changed much.
No, I know.
You kind of are who you are.
Yeah, that's right. No, there were lots of good times, Jordan. All good times.
I think I remember mostly when I was a little kid reading with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that was great. That was so much fun.
I thought so. Because what I
Yeah,
remember, I was
right.
pretty little, but what I remember is that, well, first of all, we had a Dr. Seuss book come every week or something like that because we were in a book club. And you used to come home every night. And after dinner, we would lay on the rug. We had one of those hooked rugs. And we'd lay on the rug and you'd put your arm around me and away we'd go through one or two books. And you taught me to read, and I remember that going on for quite a long time. And it was wonderful to have the attention and, and to be given that gift of literacy as well and to have it instilled in me at such a young age. I loved reading. It's really shaped my life in every possible way. So, and I remember, one of the things that was different about you, we had our differences when I was a teenager. Sounds kind of like the ones you had with your dad, both stubborn. And I had hanging around with rough kids. And we misbehaved a lot of drinking and that sort of thing, and you put up with them. That's about all you should have done, really, I suppose. But most of my friends, they didn't have a good relationship with their fathers. They had no respect for them. And it was,
I know.
yeah, it was really rough on them. Those my friends. Those are my teenage friends, or the ones in junior high.
Yeah, I know.
And when we were alone with my friends, they'd have a bad interaction with their dad or something, and they'd be pretty hard on him, badmouth him, and I could tell they were mad, bitter, resentful, angry about it, and they had their reasons, or hurt by it, or a combination of all those things, disappointed. But I never felt that way. Even when we had altercations.
Yeah.
I knew that fundamentally, despite whatever altercations we might have, that you were on the side of my better angels, let's say.
Well.
Yeah, well, that's a tricky thing to manage,
Always that.
Yeah, but it's a tricky thing to manage because when you have kids, you kind of, on the one hand, you want to like the kid, but on the other hand, you want to like the kid that they could be even better. So you have to kind of balance that acceptance for and appreciation for who they are right now with a desire to foster further development. And I think mothers sort of specialize in the former and dads to some degree specialize in the latter. It's not that cut and dried, obviously. But the fact that you had belief in my potential has always been of inestimable value. And one of the things that really hurt me when I went on tour and talked to so many people was that was so lacking for so many people. They didn't have someone who really had their back, like really, when the chips were down. Both you and Mom, I knew of that. I knew that was true. And that gives you kind of a foundation underneath you, Well, you obviously had it with your grandparents and your mother.
Yep.
I don't know what it would be like to grow up without that. You'd be pretty lost, pretty alone.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt it would be tough. Anyhow, Mom and I always said we were young and dumb, so everything goes well.
Yeah, well, what's been the most challenging part of your marriage, Dad? What's been the most challenging part of being married? Because you've been married how long now?
I don't know, 64 years, something like that.
Yeah, well, that's a long time.
We got married in 60. What does that make it?
61.
61.
Yeah,
Well,
it just
wasn't
feels like
quite as
64.
much. Yeah, it just feels like 64.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most challenging thing. Jesus. I don't know. I guess maybe the most challenging thing is trying to be a decent person because I have a lot of trouble with that.
What do you mean?
Well, just that.
What do you have to control?
Well, I'm very stubborn. I guess probably quite opinionated. And very vocal. All those things can cause problems, and I know that they've caused problems for your mom.
Yeah, well, Mom's kind of gentle person, although she's got a spine.
Yep, she's a good person.
Yeah, she is a good person. She's easy to get along with. She laughs a lot. Friendly, outgoing. Yeah, I can't ever
Yep.
remember really having a fight with Mom, you know? And when when we were kids and we used to make her upset, you know, because we were rambunctioning around too much, and we made her upset, that always made us feel guilty because, you know, Mom didn't get upset. If you made Mom upset, you were probably being bad. So we just feel guilty about it. So, yeah, well, you know, being stubborn and opinionated and assertive has its virtues too.
Well, they have its virtues, but they are making it very difficult for us.
Yeah, well, it's not easy to negotiate continually with someone under the same house, and you and Mum are quite different in many ways too. So you
Yeah.
have those temperamental divides to cross. I mean, she's more extroverted and social than you are.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was extroverted and social.
No, well, you took my personality test, right? And I mean, you were assertive on the extroverted scale, but low in enthusiasm, whereas Mum is high in enthusiasm and not as assertive. So
Jesus, you remember things too long.
yeah, well, I was curious, you know.
Yeah, well, it's probably true.
Yeah, well, I didn't, you know, I got to say, when I grew up, I never saw you really back down. So that was something.
No, you, I don't back down very often. And I'll be damned if I'm going to back down to this government. Or whatever in the hell we've got.
So when are we going to see each other again, do you think?
Well, I guess when you come to see me, because I can't go anywhere. And I can't see it changing.
Yeah, I'm not very happy about that.
No, I'm not neither. But I got to live with me too.
Yeah, I know. I'll come up. I got my tour
I
routing
know.
pretty soon.
Yep,
I'll figure it out to come up.
good.
Got anything else you want to say? What's the best relationships you've ever had in your life?
The best relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess for me, your mother, you, Vaughn, Joel.
Yeah, well, in our culture, kids, they get a bad rap. But one thing, if you're careful, you can have the best relationships you've ever had in your life with your kids. That's really something. The thing is, they pay you back for, people think of kids as this, like, interruption in their life or an inconvenience or.
No.
No. That's not right. They're the best thing that ever happens to you if you're careful.
You're right. Anyway,
Off
we
to
should
the
probably
UK.
quit.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, before we can't talk.
before we can't talk.
Yeah. Off to the UK tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we wish you luck.
Thank you.
I don't think you need it, but
Luck's
never
good.
hurts to have a little.
It's good to have some luck too. Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
an incredibly exciting trip. Ridiculously exciting trip. It's
Well,
a ridiculously
keep in
privileged
touch.
trip. I will. I'll call you. I'll call you.
Yep.
Shopping for car insurance is the worst.
This quote says $153 a month. Driver discount?
Experience like having a team, comparing your current policy to quotes from top providers.
I saved over $900.
We compare, you save on car insurance. Go to Experian.com/car.
The American working